Well, hello, friends, and good afternoon. Bill Hobson here as we come to you with a special live stream, news breaking moment kind of a conversation. I am currently located in Gaylord, in the Gaylord Golf Mecca, as our TV crew is on the road shooting a TV special. And as things happen, today is kind of a rain out, stay inside and dodge the raindrops kind of a day. And lo and behold, as I'm sitting here kind of catching up on a lot of things in an administrative and planning way, in comes the email from the Rocket Classic announcing that the 2026 edition of the Rocket will be the final edition of the Rocket. And that story was broken by my friend Tony Paul at the Detroit News, who is always on the cutting edge of stories like this. So I said, Tony, are you free for a little bit this afternoon so we can talk about what all this means, how it all happened, and man, it's kind of a bummer announcement. I will say I don't find it shocking, but it's kind of a bummer announcement. So, Tony, it's good to see you. How are you?
Good, Bill. How are you? I don't understand it. How bad is it raining if you're not outdoors in the
Oh, it,
really
yeah,
bad?
monsoon. How about we go monsoon? They got hit pretty good today. It's funny you say that because there are a number of things we do on the TV show that are off the course activities and attractions and things like that. And we were able to squeeze in. We were watching radar like we were professional meteorologists today, and we'd find a 20-minute window to head across town and do a few things. So it hasn't been a totally non-productive day, but right now it's shut down for a while, to say
Yeah,
the
there are
least.
there are no better meteorologists than golf writers or golf media people and baseball beat writers.
There you
We are,
go. We can
we are
tell what's
tuned
coming.
into the weather apps.
Yeah, and as it turns out, camera gear does not really care for rain, so we'll stay inside for a little bit. And meanwhile, we talk about this story, and a lot of people very disappointed to learn that this is the final Rocket Classic. That I would hope would be an infusion of support for this final version because they do have a pretty good field already committed to come. And we've talked about that before on our program, and we've been promoting it on social media. But let me get to the heart of the question. What happened? Why is it over now? Why pull the plug now?
Yeah, I mean it's there, as you know, there are a lot of layers to that question. It's a very strange time in the world, and especially the sports ecosphere, and that definitely carries down into golf, which is the changing landscape of golf right now. There's a new schedule that's going to probably come out in 2027, at least in part, maybe fully by 2028, where the new CEO wants fewer tournaments, but he wants more of the big guys to play in those tournaments. He wants bigger markets and all that. And that sounds great. And we all want to see the best golfers play against each other all the time. But when you cut down on the amount of elevated signature tournaments, what it's doing is it's causing, a significant increase in the title sponsorship cost. I mean, I've been told that right now, Rocket and tournaments like the Rocket, 3M, John Deere, you name it, it's like a $15 million commitment a year, a ballpark figure for the sponsorship. To move into that elevated range, it's going to be about 30. And look,
Wow, man.
Dan Gilbert's got $30 million. A lot of people, that sponsor golf and sponsor sporting events have $30 million. That doesn't mean that they see that as being the best way to spend their money. And I think that Rocket kind of came to the belief, and it's not 100% unanimous at Rocket. There were people that wanted to continue sponsoring the tournament and move into that elevated realm of tournaments, and the PGA Tour was interested in Detroit joining that upper level as part of the track one, so to speak, that Brian Rolap, the new CEO, has talked about. But when it came down to it, the people who are cutting the checks and make those decisions decided that the value just wasn't there because, as much as I love the Rocket and as much as you love the Rocket, and as great as it was in those early years, the last few years it's been stagnant. Ricky Fowler made that putt in 2023 to win that tournament, and that was electric, and the buzz was great. That was really the last time the Rocket was a marquee showcase, and if you will. It's been kind of stagnant since then. Attendance has been down. The PGA Tour doesn't put out the attendance numbers, but noticeably it was down. I know on a on authority that the Rocket lost money this past year for the first time in the tournament's history. Sponsorships were way down. So it just became kind of one of those, it had run its course type things. And Rocket was not interested in being a track 2 event, right? The second tier between the Corn Ferry Tour and that new elevated schedule. They weren't interested in that because from the Rockets' point of view, they feel like they've been treated like a tier 2 event for the last several years since LIV came aboard, and the PGA Tour responded by creating this winners and losers hierarchy system out of the golf schedule. And the Rocket was a loser, as many other tournaments were. And so they weren't interested in paying the $50 million for that. And when it came down to it, they decided would the value be there to double their commitment to $30 million or, get involved in something else, and maybe golf and professional golf would run its course. And I think that's what they decided. I think the PGA Tour wanted the Rocket to stay, and they were
sure.
Yeah. And the PGA Tour, for what it's worth, they say that the trade is still valuable to them. It is a top 15 market, and Brian Rolapp says he wants to be in all the big markets. I just think it's a weird time for the PGA Tour right now because you're playing with fire when you're playing with $150 million legacy commitments to the tour, which Dan Gilbert and Rocket have been a sponsor to the tune of over $150 million for the last 13 years. And basically you're telling them that that's not good enough. And so now you lose that sponsorship entirely. And, they lost the Farmers Insurance. They did replace them, obviously, really quickly out in San Diego. But I think there are a lot of sponsors out there that are wondering whether, like the Rocket, whether it's worth it to go into that elevated event and if the return on the investment is going to be there. And Rocket decided it's not.
Well, at some point, just because you do have the money doesn't mean that it's a wise investment. In fact, in a lot of cases, people who have achieved quite a bit in their professional lives and have amassed considerable wealth got there by being smart and by being wise and considering things like return on investment. And so if the PGA Tour keeps jacking up the price tag, at some point, very intelligent people say, hey, we really want this event to happen. We love being the centerpiece of a Detroit Renaissance. We love all the energy around the tournament. But if you're going to double our price tag, we can't justify that. We can't justify it to our bottom line in any way, shape, or form. And I guess, Tony, that's the part that confuses me about the Rolapp-led tour. And I can't lay all this at his feet because the framework for most all of this was in place when he stepped into the role and when Monahan stepped out, having left a pretty messy situation to clean up because of how poorly he dealt with the onset of LIV and that kind of stuff. And yet at the same time, you're 100% correct when you say that Rocket had invested $150 million as a client, as a sponsor, as a customer of the tour. And from a customer relations standpoint, it seemed like whenever questions came up about the date for the tournament, the Rocket lost. Whenever questions came up about points that would be awarded for players, the Rocket lost. Whenever it was the key vital questions to strengthen the field, it seemed like the tour always favored everybody else. But am I just being parochial in that observation, or is that accurate?
No, look, in the early years, it was good. I mean, before the days of LIV, they got some big names and they got their Dustin Johnsons and they got their Phil Mickelsons. And, there were, Bubba Watson was a regular. Patrick Reed was a regular. They had good fields. LIV really threw, as lived through the whole golf industry landscape, professional touring golf, into a state of chaos. And, LIV was a disruptor. It is what it is. But the PGA Tour made some mistakes. As you mentioned, they didn't take it seriously until LIV launched. And then they tried to play catch up. And I think they went to the extreme measures to play catch up in trying to match the purses and the signature events, because that's really what happened. The Rocket had some good fields. I mean, they were fine fields, and now look, they paid for them. You know, they didn't get Phil Mickelson to come to Detroit out of the goodness of his heart. He got a $500,000 check to come to Detroit. Dustin Johnson got a nice player appearance fee, but they got him to come. You know, but when the PGA Tour decided to create this whole ecosystem of elevated events, it was a great idea in theory for the events that were elevated, but it left all the other events just as, I mean, literal. I put in my article today, the PGA Tour created a system of winners and losers.
Yeah.
And they told the Rocket and the John Deere and 3M and, you know, a bunch of others that you are a loser. And so you're going to have to scrap and claw for anybody you can get. I mean, the Rocket is lucky that they sponsored Ricky Fowler. At least they had one of the most popular golfers every year was in their field because he was paid by Rocket. But you had to scrap and claw for every appearance by Colin Morikawa, and it used to be they'd get 5 to 10 good names, and now it was like you're just kind of waiting for the 1 or 2 big names that they might get, right? And they didn't have a player appearance fee budget like other tournaments did. I wonder what 3M's is in getting Scotty Scheffler this year. I had heard Scotty Scheffler's player appearance fee is well into the 7 figures, and Rocket just doesn't have that kind of money that they were willing to dole out. But so after LIV came aboard and the PGA Tour kind of reacted, it made a loser out of the Rocket, and I think Rocket was very bitter about that. And when it came time to the PGA Tour officially going with the Track 1 and the Track 2, Rocket had basically felt like, we've been at Track 2. We've been at Track 2 for the last several years, and we're not going to be at Track 2 anymore. And quite frankly, don't appreciate how we were treated during those years where we were kind of an afterthought. You mentioned it. I mentioned obviously the fields were tough. The scheduling, they never had a place on the schedule. It was bouncing all over the place. They never had that set weekend, but it was always pigeonholed, shoehorned between majors, the British Open, the US Open, which made it tough to get bigger names. So the Rocket just felt like we're not going to be Track 2. And quite frankly, we don't really like where the relationship has kind of gone the last few years. And we feel like $30 million could be spent elsewhere. And like you said, just because you have $30 million doesn't mean you want to spend $30 million on an event that has lost its luster, and you're not convinced that even bringing in Rory McIlroy and Scotty Scheffler in the future is worth doubling your investment.
By the way, you likely raised a few eyebrows when you mentioned tournaments with player appearance budgets, because that's sort of like the wink that the SEC always had with its athletes. And oh no, we're not paying anybody, but they would find a way before NIL. It was the same kind of thing. And it's been going on for quite a while in the PGA Tour world. It's not specific to this current era. I mean, there were times when a player, maybe one named Woods, Tiger, would suddenly be driving a Buick, which I think we're all well aware he wasn't really personally driving, but that helped get him into Grand Lake. Having said that, this is such a strange time. Do you see a moment or a time where Roll-Up says, oh man, I don't want to lose Detroit, let's find a way? Or do you think all of those conversations have already happened and all of those avenues have already been explored?
Yeah, I think they have. I think that Rocket is done. I've been told that Rocket is out, and doesn't seem to be any point of return. The only way I could see Rocket ever getting involved again would be if it's like one of those conglomerate type deals, like a 3-way sponsorship, right? I mentioned it in my article today. Like somebody high up floated to me the idea of, it had been talked about maybe doing a so-called Detroit Open, and you get 3 big sponsors, Ford's, Illich's, and Gilbert, say, for instance. Maybe they get involved in that because even rich people would rather pay $10 million than $30 million, especially when the return on investment's just not there. So if the return on investment's not great, you might be willing to go in with somebody and do something like that. But I've been told that Rocket is almost assuredly out. They had negotiations for months. I was told that a decision was supposed to be made about the option for 2027. I was told that it was supposed to be made by August, and I kept making calls. Well, it's not August anymore. It's almost August again. So you could kind of see this coming. Again, there was a a group of people at Rocket that did see the value in continuing. But and another angle to this story is Rocket is Dan Gilbert is the founder and the chairman of the board, whatever. But they do have leadership people, presidents and vice presidents, and they have a lot of new leadership at Rocket that aren't from Detroit. They aren't tied to the Detroit narrative. And, as much as $30 million, maybe a drop in the bucket to Rocket, they also are, and I put this in the article today, they are a publicly traded company. Yeah. So you have to explain to people why you're spending $30 million. You can't just be because you get a couple, 2-minute showcase pieces on CBS about how great the revival is of Detroit. And that's worth the return on the investment. You have to explain why it's valuable. And I think they had run out of ways to kind of justify it.
We have a live chat going, by the way, during this live stream. And John Grote writes in, professional golf in Michigan has gone downhill since they ended the Buick Open in 2009. And you could make an argument one way or the other. You could also say that for the last few years, we've had a really good stable of, it's been a really good run. We've had the Rocket. We still have it for this season. The Ally Challenge at Warwick Hills, bringing in the PGA Tour champions. This state is filled with healthy and strong LPGA events this weekend in Midland at the Dow. I'll be there for the broadcast of the radio show. Next weekend is the Meyer over in Grand Rapids. They finally got those two events back to back. There are 3 Epson Tour events for the ladies, which are really well done. And let's not forget what took place in Plymouth at St. John's last August with the LIV Tour Championship, or however they call it. And now, Tony,
I'm surprised you remember that. I didn't see you there.
Yeah. I was all over that event. But then, as recently as this morning, in an interview on, I think it was CNBC.
CNBC, yeah.
Scott O'Neill from LIV was asked by whoever the host was, can you guarantee that the remaining events on this year's LIV calendar will take place? And he said, here's what I can guarantee you. I can guarantee you that whoever invests in LIV will have a great return on their investment. In other words, I don't even know if we're going to have that event in August in St. John's. And we could go from this wonderfully packed calendar that brings the professional tours to our state, because I don't anticipate the Ally continuing after this year. I could be wrong. They haven't made an announcement. That's my conjecture and my observation based on lack of good news announcements coming on an extension at Warwick Hills. However that plays out, we could very well go from packed to a much more sparse calendar where the ladies take center stage, which is wonderful, but the men's professional tours would just be gone.
Yeah.
And you talk about happening in a hurry. That's just kind of a wild from 0 to 60 and then from 60 back to 0, the brakes being slammed on. Do you think that's where we're going to be in 2027?
Yeah, I mentioned that in the article today too, and yeah, it is. We went after the Buick Open. There was a real void. That chatter is correct. The Buick Open was such a great event, and when it went away after 2009, also amid the auto crisis and the economy boom, and so we lost that one. And then we went a long time without really any marquee events. I know that there was, I think there was an LPGA event that was in Ann Arbor for a year or two, there were trickles. But then, the LPGA came with the Meyer and the Dow, and then the Rocket came, which was a big deal. The return of the PGA Tour, the first ever PGA Tour annual stop in the city limits of Detroit. It was a long vision of Dan Gilbert. And then they got the Ally back, so you brought golf back to Warwick Hills, and then you got LIV Golf. So you had every major golf, every major golf tour. And I know, say what you want about LIV, it's a major golf tour. When you have John Rahm and you have those guys, it's a major tour. So we had every major golf tour last year in the state of Michigan, and allegedly this year. But I think you're right. I think it's very interesting to watch what happens at the Cardinal. I've been monitoring it. I've been checking in with the people over there. Have you heard anything, or what do you?
No, but I would recommend everybody get paid in advance. Let's just say that. I don't think collection agencies do well in that particular realm. By the way,
I agree with you about the Ally, though. The Ally is possibly, Ally, the Champions Tour is run by the PGA Tour, and
exactly.
Rolep's taking a hard look at finances too, and they heavily subsidize the Champions Tour. And
I mean, yes,
I would hate to see the Champions Tour go away, because the Champions Tour started basically as this retirement plan, kind of sparked by Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer, to kind of help their
yeah,
buddies, make a living in their 50s when they weren't able to make a living on the PGA Tour anymore. So Jack and Arnie would go out and play, and Chichi Rodriguez and Lee Trevino, they would go out to play. Most guys really didn't need the money, but but they made it. You remember the 90s was a big deal on the Champions Tour.
yeah.
I would hate to see the Champions Tour go away, because I think
Me
it's
too.
valuable, and I think it's nostalgic. But yeah, I mean, there's a very good chance to go from 5 major tour stops to 2 next year, just the
Yeah.
LPGA.
There may be a number of golf fans who are surprised to hear that the PGA Tour subsidizes the champions, but think of it in the same terms as the NBA and the WNBA.
Mhm.
The Champions Tour on its own really cannot stand on its own. That's why at Warwick Hills, they surround the golf with country concerts, and they sell more tickets for the concerts than they do for the golf. Eddie Jones chimes in. He says, I'm about as hardcore of a golf fan as you can get. And to be 100% honest, I never saw the appeal to attend the Rocket. It was always advertised really well, but it just never did it for me. And Eddie, in response to that, I would just say, I love the Rocket.
Mhm.
They did a great job in staging that championship, from the visuals, the 313 area. It appealed to me greatly. I loved it. I thought it was really well done, even if the tour didn't give it the respect it deserves. And I have no doubt that this final edition will be worth attending. It'll be really good. You talk about the ability to go and just watch golf in a really good venue setting, where you don't have to strain to see shots, where you have good sight lines. You can see multiple holes from certain places. I really like that. And Tony, I think one question that we need to address, probably in our closing couple of moments here, has to do with the Detroit Golf Club.
Mhm.
Here's a club that just invested millions of dollars. As soon as
16
last
club,
year's
yeah.
tournament ended, they started tearing it up. They redid the entire joint. The members got to help pay for that. The tour doesn't pay for that. And it was done, I believe, with the intention of the tour being there long term. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But what's the feel and the vibe of the folks who call Detroit Golf Club their home, who just went, hey, my assessment went up how much? And now what's happening? They still have a good course, don't get me wrong. But did they know this was a possibility when they said yes to the renovations?
Yeah, there are 3 key stakeholders in kind of determining the future of the Rocket. There's PGA Tour, there's Rocket itself, and there's Detroit Golf Club. This may come as a surprise to you, but I am getting the vibe, and I've gotten the vibe for a long time. Detroit Golf Club is not overly sad to see the Rocket go.
Okay.
The majority of the membership, maybe not the majority, but a loud portion of the membership is not sad to see the Rocket go. It had been a growing discontent among many of the members for many, many years. Now, look, that's not uncommon to get some of that at a PGA Tour course, because, look, it is a big ask and a hassle to be a member and pay a lot of money at a golf course that hosts a PGA Tour or LPGA or any big event, right? It can be a hassle when you're spending all this money on dues and monthlies and food minimums and whatever to be part of a club, and then your club hosts the Rocket. It's great to be able to say, I'm a member at a club that hosts the PGA Tour I'm a member where Ricky Fowler made that putt to win the title on number 18. I've made that putt 100 times. There's prestige there. That's great. But the Rocket build out started in the middle of May, and the teardown of the Rocket infrastructure didn't completely end until 2 months after the Rocket. That's almost the entire golf season that you're dealing with the build out. You don't really get your course the way you wanted it when you joined. And to be honest, after the Rocket came down, the Rocket stand, the grandstands, the concession stands, the TV towers, it looked bad. I mean, the grass looked bad. There were really beat up spots, and it just came down to a lot of these members didn't like it. I don't know if it's more than 50%. I've been told by many people it's about 50-50 split on the membership, who wanted it, who didn't. That said, the people that don't want it, I caution you, careful what you wish for, like, because your club is a lot of what it is because of the Rocket and the PGA Tour. Before the PGA Tour came there, and Dan Gilbert handpicked that place because he insisted that the Rocket be in the city limits of Detroit. So it fell in the Rocket's lap. The membership was stagnant. The clubhouse needed repairs. All of a sudden the Rocket comes there, the membership just spikes like crazy. Now COVID had a little bit to do with that too, because all the private clubs did really well with the COVID thing, but the Rocket helped. They got massive infusion of cash for the clubhouse renovations. They got some course renovations. They approved the renovation, kind of approved it. There was a whole controversy that you can read about at DetroitNews.com from a couple of years ago, but they were supposed to hit a certain like 65, 70% threshold on the vote. They didn't quite get there, but then they ended up saying, oh yeah, it's approved anyway. But anyway, there were some members not very happy about that either. But the club also got, I was told the club got about $2 million a year from the Rocket as a rental fee and for goods and services. That's not nothing.
Yeah, you'll notice that in your budget for sure.
Yeah, you're going to notice that. So we'll see. I've been told that, again, it wasn't maybe quite 50% of members that were ready to see it move on. I've also been told since this announcement came out, since we broke the story in the Detroit News, that there are some members that have reached out going, what the hell's happening? And I was told that somebody at the club, one of the club officials said to this member, well, you wanted the tournament to go away anyway. And they're like, well, not really. And so, careful what you wish for. You never know what you have until it's gone, right? Because the prestige of the club takes a hit without the Rocket there, I think.
Well, Tony, thank you for the insight. And once again, great job reporting on all of this. I will state for the record again here at the end of our conversation, I'm glad we have one left. I enjoy the Rocket immensely. I hope it's packed. I hope the tour has to look at that and say, what did we do? How did we screw this up? And make it an untenable proposition for Rocket to continue. And I look forward to seeing you there.
I wonder if they're gonna have to answer those questions. How many cities they're gonna have to answer those questions?
Yeah, I think they're going to be more and more. And the players at some point are going to say, our opportunities to play are dwindling, and the events that still exist are just for the elite of the elite. What about the rest of us? And I think those questions are still to be answered. So thank you again. And by the way, folks, tonight, it's Tuesday, tonight at 9, we have another live stream coming your way. I am in Gaylord right now, the Gaylord Golf Mecca. So we're very close to Charlevoix. The Charlevoix boys high school golf team is, I think, the story of the last few years in our state of golf. And they just won the state championship a year after their incredibly devastating team accident. We're going to Coach Doug's house and joining the entire team for a pizza party and a live stream to talk all about this. I cannot wait to see how it all comes together. I hope you'll join us, because somebody, Tony, needs to write that story and option it into a movie. You do that, you could probably retire on those rights to that film. So get on it.
Well, I was actually talking to Doug the other day, and I asked him, I said, so when are you selling the movie rights? And he goes, yeah, how do you do that anyway?
Exactly. We're going to ask that question tonight. So
I have no idea. I've never sold a movie. So I'm sure if anyone's out there that is interested, he'll find out real soon.
Hey, thanks, man. Much appreciated.